We are recording this session.
Welcome, everyone, and we're very excited that you're here with us today. In this conversation, we want to make sure that we are not only talking to you, but that you are also providing feedbacks and comments. So please use the chat box to submit your questions or to make comments as we go along. And also, if you want to speak instead of writing in the chat box, I ask you that please go to the participants pane on your account and use the raise hand feature to raise your hand, and we will call on you, and you are able to open your mic and you know speak on, and with any comments or questions you may have. My name, next slide please. My name is Fanny Ochoa, and I'm a family resource specialist at Span Parent Advocacy Network, and we're going to be talking a little bit more about who we are in a few minutes. And I support families in becoming effective advocates for their children by providing information and support. I am also a parent group specialist and under another project, and I support the healthy development of special education parent advisory groups, or CPAGs, and other groups within school districts and the communities that I serve. Many of the topics that we're going to be talking about today um, resonate a lot with my personal experience as a Latina. I came to the United States when I was 11 years old. I understand how scary it is to be in a foreign land where you don't know many people, where you don't know where to go for help. And so that everything that you hear and all the voices around you are just unintelligible noise. I understand the struggles of being an English language learner that relied heavily on the support of teachers and people that understood that my parents were not able to support me, and people that saw that I have potential if given an opportunity um, to be supported. um I see my parents, I see myself, I see in every family that I support, because I know their struggles and I can relate to them. And Brenda Figueroa, who's here with me today, is also going to share a little bit about who she is and how she relates to this topic.
Thank you, Fanny. My name is Brenda Figueroa. I am the Director of Family to Family, Health Information Centers, and Parent to Parent, New Jersey. I am also the proud mother of two young Latino men who happen to have disabilities. I am a proud Puerto Riqueña from Aguada, Puerto Rico. My family moved to New York when I was 5. My first year of kindergarten was spent in silence because I didn't speak English and I was not afforded the opportunity to be part of an ESL class. We moved back to Puerto Rico by the time I was 11. I went to school, college, had my kids in Puerto Rico, and moved to New Jersey in September 2005. I come from a big family where only 3 of us are fluent in English. I know firsthand how my family members get frustrated when they know what the interpreter is doing, and usually it's not even translating word for word, and they can't even express it. Our experiences shape us. This is why it was important for us to share our story. Next slide. So who is SPAN? SPAN is the New Jersey's federally funded Parent Training Information Center. With over 20 projects, our mission is to empower and support families and inform and involve professionals interested in the healthy development and education of children and youth. Our foremost commitment is to children and families with the greatest need due to disability, special health concerns, or mental health needs. Poverty, discrimination based on race and ethnicity, gender, language, immigrant or homeless status, involvement in the child welfare or juvenile justice systems, geographic location, and other special circumstances. In order to achieve this mission, SPAN's core programs help families, professionals, and policymakers know the rights of families and their children, access resources and information, secure appropriate services, navigate the system that serves children and families, keep children healthy and in school, prepare for life after high school, connect with other parents who understand, be catalysts to improve services for children and families, start and run parent groups, become effective partners in improving schools, and advocate for other children and families. We also provide regional and national technical assistance to other providers, over 94 centers in the nation. So please visit our website for additional information, and in a little bit, we will be sharing our website in the chat. Next slide. So in today's workshop, participants will demonstrate an understanding of a variety of techniques to identify gaps in service delivery and strategies to address these gaps. Be able to identify the apps and social media platforms that are more popular among Spanish-speaking families. And we will be able to use an action plan to identify the methods and strategic engagement through technology. Next slide.
And as we said before, we want this to be very interactive. So this is the opportunity that you have to put your comments in the chat box or raise your hands to unmute yourself. We want to hear from you. How are some of the ways that you are using to engage with the Latino speaking families you serve? And if any, what are some of the challenges that COVID-19 has had in the way that you reach out to families or you communicate with them? Are there any practices that you have put in place to reach out to your families? Thank you. We'll move into the next slide, and we are going to be talking about some of the potential barriers that and break down what Spanish-speaking Latinos face when accessing information via technology. And we're going to be talking about the tech challenges. Do they have access? Do they have knowledge of the technological options that we have today? Language and delivery. Do you know how to properly deliver the message? There's also fears involved. And do we know if there's more to the story of why they're not participating? Professional attitude. Are we listening? And the family's reluctance. And we're going to take a deeper look. Next slide.
Thank you, Fanny. They can connect because they have a smartphone. Now, how many of us have not either uttered these words or heard someone else say it? There is a misconception that because everyone, and I'm using air quotes here, has a smartphone, that they can easily connect to Zoom, webinars, etc. But let's think about it. There is more to connecting than just having a smartphone. Next slide. So potential barriers, tech challenges. What are the tech challenges families might face? They might face challenges using and or understanding various platforms. We need to provide how-to visuals. Do not assume that families know how to access specific platforms. Lack of access or limited access to the internet. And when we say this, we do not mean necessarily being able to afford internet service, but sometimes the reception in the area might not be so great or so effective. Also, prior to COVID, a lot of families connected using libraries, Starbucks, community centers, and those are not necessarily options they have available right now. So we need to keep that in mind. Make sure you are aware of how families are indeed accessing internet. Many times families are accessing internet via their smartphone, and that plays into how we engage them as well. They lack the appropriate equipment. They might only have one device for the entire family. Be aware of what and how many devices a family has access to. And to add insult to injury, We are expecting families to navigate systems and platforms that are not in their native language, and that in itself creates another barrier. Next slide.
And I know that we've heard this one also, but we provide an interpreter. Why don't they show up? When we engage Latino families, we need to be mindful that providing interpretation is not enough. Interpretation should not be the standard. As we move into the next slide, we will explore the impact that language and delivery have on Latino families. Next slide, please. Oftentimes, I hear discussions around the lack of Latino participation in meetings, especially now that most of those meetings are happening virtually. But I ask myself, why is that? So let's begin with interpretation. Is interpretation enough? And the clear and simple answer is no. First of all, did you promote the event appropriately? For example, was a flyer disseminated in Spanish? I've seen many flyers that are entirely in English, and at the bottom of the page, it will have a one-liner saying Spanish interpretation will be available. We need to remember that if a person does not speak English and they see a flyer, all the words look like gibberish to them. Why would they keep looking down in hopes that magically there's going to be a line promoting to them, especially if they're not familiar with who you are or who your organization is? Also, have you provided interpretation in the past? Did you get any feedback from the participants about the quality of interpretation? If the quality of interpretation was not up to par per the participants, they may be discouraged from participating in future events. And an interpreter can make or break the relationship that you are trying to build with Latino families. You need to make sure whether or not the interpreter is fully bilingual and can translate verbatim. When you paraphrase what is being said, most of the information being given is lost. Also, a Hispanic name is not a qualifier to assign somebody to be an interpreter. Speaking Spanish in your day-to-day life at home is very different than being able to dominate the language, especially when we are using language that is more robust or using technological terms. The information can easily be lost in translation. I have experienced interpreters that put a Spanish tone to some of the English words or some of the terms, el arithmetic, el application process. Just because you put el or la or lo in front of a word does not automatically translate. And this and other practices have supported the negative assumption that Latinos are unintelligent, um, but you cannot learn what is not properly delivered. Are we presenting the material to them in Spanish? I've seen presentations where there was interpretation, but some or even all of the handouts were in English with the excuse that I know those parents, they can understand some English, they'll be fine. Understanding some words and being fluent in the language is not the same thing. Another thing that we can look into is, did we assess the community that you are serving? Are you working in a community that is majority Spanish speaking? How about doing reverse interpretation, where you have someone translate into English and the presentation is done in Spanish? And I would urge that you get feedback from people that are listening in English in those type of situations, because you will get a real glimpse of the Latino experience with interpretation, because the same thing that is true in when you're doing interpretation into Spanish can be true when you're doing interpretation into any other language. But the best way to reach the Latino community and the most effective is to provide the information in Spanish, ditch the interpreter. And COVID has done a great job in highlighting to us, that we still have a long way to go, but also it's providing us with an opportunity to get better. And let's continue discussing other barriers that are interconnected to this barrier that we're talking about. And Brenda is going to provide us with some more information.
Yes, thank you. They know who we are, that they know we are available. So why are they not connecting with us? We have to ask ourselves, what are the reasons that are keeping families from connecting with us and or attending to our virtual meetings? Let's take a look. Next slide. Fear is a powerful barrier that cannot be overlooked. The fear of public humiliation, being ridiculed in front of others, including their own children, fear of being humiliated, belittled, or even bullied for not speaking English or for having an accent. Fear that their immigration status will be questioned. Many immigrant families have family members with different immigration status and fear that they will be recognized as such. Families fear that the authorities will be called if they voice out concerns or request access to resources. This is why we must never confuse silence with not caring or wanting to be involved. We need to change their perceptions, build trust within the community, identify those who are trusted within the community, and have them help with connecting parents to resources. When using social media, have the trusted liaisons share the resources and acknowledge who it's coming from. Tag each other. This will give you and your organization the exposure needed to start building those bridges. Be strategic. Join groups that families are already a part of. And when I'm in this technology-driven era, we're talking about Facebook and WhatsApp. Create a safe space. Do not record meetings. Families are more open to sharing their stories and experiences or addressing their circumstances when they feel safe. Reiterate to them that the info isn't shared with third parties, including but not limited to government agencies such as ICE. Next slide.
Thank you, Brenda. And now let's talk about another great barrier that Latinos families face, and that is professional attitudes. The attitude that I am the professional, therefore I am the one that knows everything, and I am the one that is going to support you. Perhaps because we are in positions of power and privilege to have access to information, and we also add the ingrained misconception that Latinos are not interested or they are not capable of learning. It can sometimes be easy to dismiss the same people that we are tasked with supporting. And as professionals, we need to challenge our own biases. We don't always know better. When we work with families, we need to check ourselves and say, am I leaving my ego and biases at the door? Latinos are not dependent and passive recipients of information. We need to ensure that we are providing and delivering the information based on their individual needs and not what we think is best for them. Are we attentively listening and valuing their input and adapting the information we provide to them in a way that they can understand without compromising the content, which means we don't need to dumb down the information. We just need to make it accessible. And by doing this, you are also reinforcing the trust gap between families and yourselves. Next slide.
Families' reluctance. Lack of trust is a very important conversation to have. When working with families, we need to build trust. Families need to feel safe, comfortable, and heard. Are we truly listening to learn? We need to learn How to not say, I understand, but focus on what is being shared. Families may be suspicious about becoming a token voice without a meaningful and substantial participation. Families may be caught up in more pressing matters. COVID has exacerbated these concerns even more. Attending a meeting might fall to the bottom of their priority list if they are concerned with issues like proper health care, food insecurity, paying rent, and job stability. That's why we must ask ourselves, are we having meetings that provide resources and platforms to address their needs? Are we connecting them to the right resources based on their most pressing needs? Are these resources relevant to the current situation? Are we collecting data on these issues? We need to not only collect the data, but share it with the relevant agencies to advocate for better services and support. COVID is providing us with an opportunity to bridge the trust gap with the families we serve. We are in a unique position to become the first stop for families seeking information and support. Let's capitalize on it. Next slide. And we made sure that we integrated some opportunities for question in our presentation. So please feel free to either raise your hands and we will unmute you, or to write in the chat box any questions you might have.
Yeah, and we really want to hear from you, because this is not only us trying to support you, but also to support ourselves with information. I mean, do you agree with the things that have been said so far? Have you had any experiences that you can share where you have witnessed or have families come to you with some information? We want to hear about all of that. Let me just see. Thank you so much. Next slide.
Before we move along, we need to address the elephant in the room. Any ideas what this might be? Fanny will now address this very important issue. Next slide.
Thank you, Brenda. And we are going to be talking. Actually, we have a comment in the chat box, Brenda, before we move on. I have a fear that I will fail if I interact with non-English speaking person. Thank you, Ramona, for being so forthcoming with that information. And let me just say, you should not fear interacting with a non-English speaking person. I can say from experience, I have many colleagues that are not English speaking, yet the Latino families that we work with are very happy when they see them, and they receive them with open arms, and they go to every presentation that they do, because it's not so much that you cannot speak the language, it's just how you deliver it. Are you are you putting up a welcoming face? Are you smiling? Are you looking for those allies to translate? Because even if you cannot speak the language yourself, you can definitely look for allies. And when you deliver the message with compassion and with respect, people can read body language. They can tell from, are you standoffish? People can read those things. So don't feel like you cannot interact, as long as you're open-minded and as long as you're welcoming, and that you even identify your own needs and then can identify who can support you with those. That will be perfectly, you'll be perfectly fine. And I hope I answer your question, and continue to flood the chat with questions and comments, you guys. So this cultural competence within Latinos may come to a surprise to many of you, but this is a very big and real issue amongst Latinos. Just because Latinos or Hispanic or Latinx, however you want to refer to us, um, it does not make you culturally competent. We come from different cultures and have different customs, and believe it or not, Spanish is one of the only things that connect us. But we're very different. We also have a long history of European colonization, African slavery, and global immigration patterns that have brought with it lots of racism and colorism amongst us. There is sometimes also a generational disconnect. You can find that some, not all, second or third generation Latinos may not necessarily understand that other Latinos that do not speak English are not being lazy or complacent or disengaged. They may not have the same Latino experience, even if their parents do. Even if their parents were immigrant, even if their parents struggle to make sure that they provided opportunities for their children to get an education or have an opportunity to a better job, they have not lived the experience. So even though they are Latinos, they cannot speak for all Latinos. So we shouldn't be looking for those um, oh, everybody that's Latino understands what is needed. And there is also a long-term trauma that some second, third generation Latinos may be facing, and that is because their parents know how hard it was to move forward, because their parents knew what struggle, because they probably saw humiliation towards their parents, because the parents wanted to make them assimilate so much to alleviate the potential for facing the same things, that they may be culturally disconnected, even if they're eating the Latino foods, even if they are proudly saying they're Latinos. There are going to be gaps in their knowledge of the culture, and even how they see other Latinos. And that doesn't make them bad people, but it just makes them, you know um maybe they too need to get cultural competence training, and to better serve those communities. We have to be mindful of that. Are we having those conversations as teams? Are we having those hard conversations as an organization? And when we're looking for professional development opportunities, as I said, everyone should attend. Even I, that came to this country when I was 11 years old, I find myself sometimes disconnected from a lot um, of the people of my community, because I have adapted a lot of things. I have not experienced a lot of things. So I'm always looking for opportunities myself to make sure that am I being culturally competent? Brenda?
Thank you, Fanny. And I think that's why it is so important for us to always share our story and be open about our experiences. So let's now talk a little bit more about the actual technology behind it. So virtual meeting platforms. Virtual meeting software is application and other digital platforms that will bring people together over the internet. Usually, these apps include a form of video conferencing as well as tools like chat, reactions, and screen sharing. Examples include the way we're meeting today in Zoom, GoToMeeting, WebEx, Google Meet, and Microsoft Teams. Some might even say that these are actually the most used right now, currently. There is a consensus among Latino parents that Zoom and Google Meet are the easiest to navigate. Many families find the Zoom interface easier to manipulate even if they're using their phone. However, when registration is required in Zoom, it can become a barrier. So we need to create opportunities to build their capacity by teaching those families that need it how to register. For example, we can create special sessions for registration walkthroughs. That's one way we can do it. We can also, when we're having support meetings, which is something we're going to be implementing really Zoom allows us to do breakout rooms. Let's do a private breakout room where we can guide them one-on-one. And if it has to be, share some personal information to help them through the registration process. This is all about building capacity and breaking down a bit of those assumptions. Next slide.
Thank you, Brenda. Nowadays, most of us, we use some sort of social media platform to stay in touch with families, to stay in touch with friends, or even to follow that funny cat with the hilarious memes. And the great thing about using social media is that you don't have to be a technology whiz to be effective. Anyone can use it, and it's free. Today, however, we're going to focus on the most popular platforms out there, which are Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, and WhatsApp. And everyone, like as I said, everyone is using one or the other. But are we using those platforms to seek information and support? And are agencies capitalizing on the platforms to connect with families? Next slide. So let's begin with Facebook. By far, Facebook is the most popular platform amongst Latinos. When it was first introduced to the public, many Latinos used this platform to connect with family members that they had long before lost contact with. I know personally of families that were undocumented, that had 10 plus years that they did not see their family members, and they were finally able to connect or have a video call through Facebook. And today, Facebook is still the main, that's still one of the main reasons why people use it. Since its launching, Facebook has become more than a mode of connecting. It has become the go-to place for information sharing. With this ability, we can use agencies, groups with common interests, media outlets, and other people have the ability to create pages and Facebook groups. And that is a great networking platform. But many Latinos that are not English speaking may have missed the evolution of Facebook. And we need to connect to those families. It's not that they are not using Facebook, it's just that they are not using it for the great purposes that they can be used for right now. So we have to look at what practices are we using? Are we sending our families to connect to our pages? Are we making sure that we are posting in Spanish as well as in English to make sure that families will stay connected? Are you making sure that when you do post in Spanish, and there's something in English and Spanish, that if it is targeted for the Spanish audience, that you are putting the Spanish information on the page? Because many times you will link the flyer, but all the information will be in English. Next slide. Also, let's talk about Twitter and Instagram, which are very similar. Oh, and I do have a question. And it says, yes, we do use Facebook. We're heavily involved with Facebook. We have many pages. We have our main page for our organization on Facebook. We also have some of the projects that we have various Facebook platforms. We have platforms that are run completely in Spanish for the Spanish audience, but we are also making sure that our Spanish speaking audience is also linked to our main accounts, because we want to make sure that they are not missing any information. And we're making sure that when we are sharing information, it's across all platforms. We have Facebook, we have Twitter, and we have other platforms that just and we use WhatsApp, which we're going to be talking about a little bit further down, and you're going to see how you can enhance the engagement with Latino families through those platforms. So with Twitter and Instagram, Instagram is the platform that is less likely to be used by Latinos, and we found some data that shows that it only has a 20% usage rate between Latinos, and we find that Twitter is mostly used to promote events or information, and it has a limited amount of characters that you can type into the interface. And I believe because there's not a lot of promotion of those limited characters in Spanish, I haven't seen, even as a user, I have not seen many agencies or media outlets or anyone really target the Latino audience. And I think that can change, and I think we can be part of that change, because the power of a hashtag is a great thing. And I think that we have an opportunity to create an evolution. Just like Facebook, we have an opportunity to create an evolution with Instagram in promoting the hashtag. We use many hashtags. Brenda's going to go through them a little bit later, and to promote our events. This can really help you in getting parents used to, oh, I'm going to check what XYZ person is doing. I posted something that is related directly to this organization. I'm going to hashtag, and that's also going to give you traffic and notoriety. And also with Instagram is becoming very popular with Latinos, because like Facebook, I'm sorry, like Twitter, it also is something that they're short messages, but they have pictures or short videos, so it's more visual. But the thing that is getting better with Instagram is that there's no limit to the message that you can type into Instagram. And so Instagram can give you the opportunity to something like today. Let's say you post a picture and say hashtag learning about Latinos and technology, and you make the hashtag, and that will give you notoriety. You can use Twitter also to connect with other agencies, or with other people that can become your allies in delivering your message, if it's a message that aligns with your agency's core beliefs and the mission and vision of your agency. Any questions? Okay,
Fanny,
yes.
Fanny, I think, yeah, it's important to note, Instagram has become very big with influencers, and it's become like that for a reason. You can influence people by sharing these beautiful photos of these experiences you're having. So as organizations, we can utilize this when we've had events, to highlight those events and to show, look what you missed, make sure you don't miss the next one. The other thing that Instagram also provides is the link in bio, and that is a way for us to create traffic to our website. Like Fanny said, yes, it has no character limitations, but a lot of people will use Instagram to just scroll and scroll around the beautiful pictures and hit like, and don't necessarily take the time to hit that little more button that will open and show you everything the person had to say. So those are just like little things to keep in mind.
But it shouldn't be. It shouldn't. Definitely should not be ignored, because more and more people are jumping into Instagram.
Yes, definitely. So let's take a look at communication. You should always consider the different people that may want to become involved in your movement. Many people do not necessarily use Facebook, Twitter, or Instagram. For example, some people have expressed that they are afraid to use the sites because they fear that the government may be using their personal information to persecute them. Some individuals choose not to use any of these platforms. So how can we stay connected with these families? Low-tech options include text and email. Emails within the Latino community aren't necessarily as effective, but we should always strive to teach them why email is important and how to use it. We have had parents that went from not realizing that their Android phone was connected to a Gmail account to using email to follow up on IEP matters. So building capacity should always be a top priority. WhatsApp. WhatsApp is a popular app among Latinos. It is an app that they use to connect with their families outside of the US. I will, from experience, say that I was not an avid WhatsApp user until Hurricane Maria hit Puerto Rico, and it was the only way to communicate with my family. So you never know. WhatsApp offers group chats that you can share messages, photos, and videos with up to 256 people at once. You can also name your group, mute or customize notifications, and more. When we started using WhatsApp, some were skeptical. However, the families were beyond excited, especially those that didn't use social media. Soon, other organizations followed our lead, and families have built a network that provides them with support and local resources. And like we've said, if you have any questions, please feel free to put them in the chat. I will acknowledge Tiara. How do you feel about WhatsApp? We love it. Our WhatsApp group, we took the state and divided it in three: North, Central, and South. And we use it only to communicate with Spanish-speaking families. Eventually, we hope to expand, but right now we're using it only for Spanish information sharing and support. And like I said, it's become a wonderful tool for outreach and connection. So we also want to acknowledge the app Remind. Remind is free. It's a safe messaging app that keeps families up to date with what's happening in the classroom. Teachers can send messages to an entire class, smaller groups, or individuals. Remind is safe. The personal contact information stays private. Phone numbers aren't exchanged between users, and messages can't be edited or deleted, so complete message history is always available to access and download. Everyone has the ability to report users who violate the Remind community guidelines. Students under the age of 13 need to enter a parent or guardian's email before they can use Remind. They can only receive messages from their teachers. Teachers can use Remind to reach students and parents on any device, including texting-only phones, so no smartphones are necessary. Students and parents can receive Remind messages by text, email, and push notifications on the app. The mobile app is available in 6 different languages. If you use Remind in Spanish, you can automatically translate messages sent in different languages. Are there apps that you know of? Feel free to share them with us on our chat. We always love to learn. Lastly, let's not forget that sometimes just picking up the phone and making a personal phone call can really go a long way. Next slide. And please feel free to share if you know any other apps that you would like to share with us. So, a call to action. The challenge is getting people involved and moving them up the ladder of engagement. People want to be involved, but they don't necessarily know how to. Often, a missing piece of the engagement puzzle is connecting someone's offline world to the online world, and technology can help make this happen. Technology can become a multi-channel approach for mobilizing the community to take action on a real-world issue. We need to set our objectives. Is your goal narrow or broad? Clarify the exact call to action that you want to elicit from your campaign. Identify the audience you would like to reach. Are you primarily communicating with people who are already familiar with your organization? Or are you reaching out to people you've identified as potential members and supporters? Who are the key players in the community? Define your message. What story are you telling? Be clear on what kind of values, problems, solutions, and actions are involved. Tailor your message to the target audience. Outreach. Select social media platforms that you plan to focus on. Easy to use social media websites such as Facebook and Twitter are a great way to start out. Start where you are comfortable. Pick a hashtag and use it within all your platforms. A hashtag can be a powerful marketing tool. For example, in our organization, we like to use hashtag parent leaders, and in Spanish, we use hashtag padres líderes. And this is something every time we share pictures or events or comments of experiences, we use the hashtag so we can go in and keep track of it. Gather resources and materials to share through social media. Strategize. When are the best times to post? Post across platforms, communities, and groups. Create a conversation that will engage others to follow or join you. Stay focused. The people and organizations that follow you on social media have a certain expectations about what type of content you post and the way you engage with them. If you stray too far from your objectives, you will lose the trust and attention of that community. It is important that all members be well informed in order to represent their constituency and ensure that group actions are appropriate. Members should feel comfortable sharing their thoughts and ideas. Data collection. Review your data. What is working? What isn't? Tweak and adjust as needed. And ask yourself, where are you now? What do you still need to know? And what is our next step? And we're going to open it up. Next slide. To questions. Anybody has any questions would like to raise their hand or comments?
And don't be shy. Don't be shy. Any question, any comment is welcome. Anything that you agree with, even everything, something that if you want to open up the conversation about something that you may have disagreed with, we would like to hear from you.
This is Patty Archuleta from Maryland Coalition of Families, and I just wanted to say that I do appreciate all the information that you're giving. I run our family leadership training program, and we've had many requests this year to serve our Spanish-speaking population. So this is really great information for me to learn how to do that in a more appropriate way. So thank you.
Thank you. And we're going to be having Patty at the end of the session. We're going to be showing our emails. If there's any questions that you have after this is done, do not hesitate to contact us with any questions.
Great, thanks.
One comment that I wanted to make, sometimes when we want to move our message, we spoke about liaisons and who are those key players. I want to give an example. In our community here in Passaic County, there's one particular town where the mayor is extremely popular. He is a Latino that is fluent in both English and Spanish, and he will post all over social media in both languages. So sometimes when you want to get your message across, there is nothing better then to tag that mayor, and your message will disseminate like crazy. So I think that those are things we need to sometimes think a little bit outside the box. Maybe a mayor isn't someone we would have engaged, but I will note he is a father of a child with a disability as well, so he fits into what we do. So I think thinking outside the box, that's what happened when we brought in the WhatsApp. We were thinking outside the box. How can we connect with parents?
Yes, and also another experience that I share, I am part of the community. I live in the county, and I often go to many support groups because I also have children with disabilities. And Ramona, to what you were saying, the person that leads the group is actually not Spanish speaking, but through the years, I have become an ally to her as the person, and we host our meetings weekly in English and Spanish. We laugh in English and Spanish. It has become so easy to do that we don't even wait for other people to translate, to do the interpretation, and like it flows very naturally. And even if I'm not there, somehow people have learned to understand each other and to help each other. So don't be afraid to break the mold.
And another thing, when it comes to interpreters, it's always, like we said, ideal to just provide the trainings, the workshops, the information in Spanish. But when that is not a possibility, then we need to allow the interpreter to do their job. If you are the English speaking presenter, be patient, slow down so the person can actually take the time to interpret appropriately. Control, we just had an experience where comments were made in the chat and one of the presenters thought it was funny, and honestly it was not funny. It was demoralizing at best. So let's try to keep those things in check, but allow that person the opportunity to properly interpret without having Fanny and I have experience where we have to remind the presenter, hello, we're translating here, please slow down. So that's
the lower button on the page.
Yeah.
And I'm not saying like go so slowly that it sounds like you're sleepy. It's just like pace yourself a little bit. Breathe when the period comes at the end of the sentence. Because by that time, remember, when you're doing interpretation, not only do you have to switch your mind into thinking in Spanish, but there are words that when interpreted, they lose the meaning. So you have to look for a synonym, or you have, and sometimes, and I was telling this to my colleague the other day, I was like, when you make a joke or something in the middle of of a presentation, I have to say, oh, she's laughing because this happened, this and that happened. I have to explain the joke. So if you pace yourself, it can be done so everybody can laugh at the same time and everybody has the information. And it works. I mean, we had our struggles when we began, like now through Zoom, that we do the interpretation, and it's more difficult to do it through Zoom because you may be wearing a headset and you have to speak at the same time, and you have somebody speaking in your head. It's not the same thing as when we were in person, where some of the noise was drowned out in a room. Now you have the person speaking in your head. But we have learned strategies through doing, on how to be better, and how to we have been improving. I mean, we are at a point that we're doing a really great job with interpretation. And also remember, with Zoom, you can assign, not only for Spanish speaker, you can assign different interpreters for different languages at the same time.
And I think also it is important to say COVID has highlighted a lot of these gaps. And once I don't want to say go back to normal, but once all this is said and done, we need to capitalize on what we've learned, all these strategies and utilize them to keep providing access. So even if we can go back to doing, for example, in-person presentations, why not make them hybrid for those families that may lack childcare or transportation? By making them hybrid between in-person and technology, we're continuing to provide access to even more attendees. So those are things to keep in mind.
Yes. And even having those initial meetings through a phone call, because many parents, they're going to go back. A lot of parents are going back to work, and when we're having conversations with the parents, it's not the same thing of having a conversation over the phone. If you can use Zoom and you can put a face to a name, that creates also a trust. It creates a circle of trust around the relationship that you have with the family. So maybe using Zoom if the parent cannot attend in person instead of calling them. Any other questions or comments that anyone else has? Thank you. So Jeanette, if we can move into the next slide, please. And I just want to leave you with one final thought. As you can see here, it says, don't victimize, empower. Latinos are not powerless. We're not victims. We want to learn. And in fact, we have a lot to say. Give us a chance to sit at the table, to be part of the decision-making process. Do not see us as consumers of information. Empower us. And I have a comment from Dara. Hello from Michigan, Alliance for Families in Detroit. Hi, Dara. My intentions as a parent mentor are to participate in group discussions like this in order to learn more about the Latinx community, cultural and equity needs. I want to expand my resources and knowledge to further help families that are a large part of the city, which includes my neighborhood. Thank you for that comment, Dara, and thank you for being an ally. And Brenda?
Okay, next slide. Thank you so much for joining us in this presentation. We will stay on if anybody else has any questions. Here you can see our emails. Please feel free to reach out to us and we will help in any way we can. We will also be emailing out some resources. And once again, thank you and have a great afternoon.
And if anybody wants to stay on, we're going to be turning off. We're going to be turning off the recording at this time. As we said, sometimes maybe we have questions that we don't want to ask in while we're being recorded or in a public forum. So we'll stay on for a few minutes to answer any questions. Jeanette, if you can please turn off the recording. Thank you.
So I'll go ahead and pause the recording.